being mean to the family. Here we go.
I'm going to come back around. Now that you're recording, let it be noted that the first remark I made, which was not recorded, is that I put family well down the list of concerns beneath such things as effluvia and etc. because
and the gym crack
first.
That's right. That's right. So before this goes out to the world in a few weeks, and before we get professional, I just wanted to get.
Don't get too professional. I didn't shave, so
yeah. Well, neither.
And I'm drinking a beer.
I even have. I got some mustache wax recently. There you go. You can kind of see that.
Oh, look at that! Look at that!
Yeah, they gotta go all twirlyville.
Oh, I was gonna say. I don't think your mustache is one of the waxable kinds, is it? Is that what you're shooting for?
Yeah. Well, once you get it, it's a little bit longer. It blends into the. Like the Motorhead thing.
Is that what you're aiming for? You aiming for like where you can
twist just a bit?
Yeah,
just a bit. Not.
You can tie parcels to each end of it and carry.
Yeah, basically carry some water. When the apocalypse finally finishes.
Cool.
You can do that.
Guy at the. Yeah.
But I did want to say just a few things, John, before we get into the show, because the show's not Star Trek focused at all. It's about me and you talking to each other and shit like that. But Star Trek is a huge part of me and what I do. And your character specifically is one of my favorite, but when I'm struggling.
Oh, I bet you say that to all the fat character actors.
All the
if
Trek
Ethan
actors.
Phillips was here, you'd be saying, "Oh, Ethan Phillips." You might even think I am Ethan Phillips.
Yeah, no, right, exactly. No, and Neelix, I tell you, no. But your voice as Dr. Phlox, I struggle with some mental health difficulties, bipolar, major depressive, and general anxiety disorders. And when I'm down deep, Dr. Phlox with optimism, Captain, is just there, and almost every day sometimes. But I just wanted to share that with you and let you know that keeps me going, helps me move forward and stay on target. So I appreciate that a lot.
Well, I only say the words they write, but thank you very much. That's appreciated.
Well, you deliver.
Now, of course, you're going to meet me, and I'm going to blow up your anxiety, depress the fuck out of you, and
you'll see, that's find what they say. Never meet your heroes, but
exactly.
Too late.
Phlox just a fictional construct. The real me.
It's just patah. So, but let me do this intro thing, and then we can pretend to be real about it. All right. Broadcasting worldwide from the Toadsuck Studio in beautiful Central Arkansas. You're listening to Bad Choices and Bourbon. I'm Dan Decker at DANDECKR, and joining me this week, the one and only John Billingsley, purveyor of many fucks on Twitter, and a big person in the entertainment industry. And just want to welcome you to the show, John. How are you?
I'm well. None of that is true. I'm a tiny little person in the entertainment industry. And it's beautiful Arkansas. How beautiful is it? It's beautiful Central Arkansas. As beautiful as
Central Arkansas is very beautiful to me. We are the natural state. And we, the central part of the state has probably the most diverse everything. So you got a lot of the geology, you got a lot of the forestry and everything like that in easy driving distance. And then,
that's where the Billingsleys are from.
Yeah, you mentioned that in our correspondence. So you come from this region as well. We could be related.
We could be related. The Billingsleys seem to be related to everybody. We were a promiscuous family. Yes, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Alabama.
That's a pretty good stretch.
It's where the Billingsleys
are from. You got to skip Mississippi to get out to Alabama.
Well, I'm sure there are probably a few stray Billingsleys in Mississippi. I used to get invited to the family reunions, but it was like, I don't think the liberal from Connecticut is probably going to make his way down there. I'm not sure I would make it back alive.
It is tenuous territory.
Yeah, my grandfather was a fireman and a fire chief, in effect, in Oklahoma City, and he was one of, I think, 10 brothers, and they were all from Arkansas. And
Oh
and
man.
Arkansas is one of like 4 states I've never been to.
Roots here, but never bothered to
Not out of
stay.
any, it's not like I avoided Arkansas. It's not like I drove around Arkansas, but I've just never been to Arkansas.
Well, it's there's a barbecue awaiting you if you ever do. You're more than
Is there a
welcome to come
futon as
visit.
well?
Well,
Is there a
there's
company
there's a good
in your
lazy
part of the
boy.
world?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Lazy
we have
boy.
plenty good. Yeah, there's a lazy boy here
All
at the Decker
all
Estate.
right. That's right. I'll get a hotel.
Hotel Studios are well accoutrement.
But I'll take you up on the barbecue.
Heck yeah, man. That's we
What's your
planning a
specialty?
throwdown once COVID is over. So
No, fuck. I know. I can't wait. We threw parties all the time and I'm just tearing my hair out.
well, I
Yeah.
was very prolific karaokeer. I don't even know if that's a word it is
Oh,
now. Yeah, love to do the
oh,
karaoke. So I'm missing that quite a lot because wow, you really don't probably
I'll
want to
stay
share a
home and man
microphone.
the barbecue while you're karaoke, and the
Yeah,
barbecue will still be there when you get back. I
that's right.
promise.
We'll acapella the karaoke because no one wants to share a microphone these days, I'm sure. And who could sing through a mask?
Even before COVID, you'd be hard pressed to get me to karaoke. I'd say that, except one of the things that happens when you go to a lot of these conventions, particularly the bigger conventions, is they try and get some of the actors to host karaoke night.
Oh,
So
I'm sure.
in spite of my protestations, I don't ever sing karaoke, but I will host karaoke, and I will try and incite the audience into dancing
So you
and drink.
DJ. You
I
DJ the
DJ.
karaoke.
I DJ and I make fun of people's choices and a
Oh,
little
well,
bit their
yeah.
singing
Well,
and a
you
little
should.
bit their
I
and
don't
just yeah.
dance I just stand there like a
Ah,
stump, but I can sing a few songs
yeah.
pretty well, to my
What
own
would
ear.
be like if you were on a desert island with a karaoke machine?
Yeah.
What would you choose to serenade the palm trees with?
Well, if I could take a couple songs with me, it would be Tribute by Tenacious D and Say It Ain't So by Weezer. Pretty good at those two.
All right. Well, those are two lucky palm trees. Is all I can say. That guy singing Weezer again.
That's right.
Like
One more time. Oh my God,
I
that's too
know.
much.
Every rodent on the island is like, stop singing fucking Weezer. Jesus.
Can you just mix it up a little?
I know. It's like, what is that movie with Tom Hanks and the volleyball? It'd be the
Oh yeah,
volleyball would like run
Castaway. Yeah.
away. Yeah,
Wilson said, "Fuck
the
off."
volleyball would run away from home if you were on that island with your
Wilson would
where's
probably
my
be mad.
volleyball?
We didn't play any Wilson Phillips. Hold on to one more thing.
You feel free to conduct a normal interview. I just keep talking. So
Well, this
I'm
show's we just talk. That's what we do.
oh,
So,
okay, good.
I mean, you can tell me since I'm not like a stalker kind of guy, and you can talk to me about where John Billingsley came from. You mentioned Connecticut. What's that all about?
I was gonna say, even if you were a stalker guy, you live in Arkansas, so it's like I'm not too worried. I mean, it's like it's gonna take you like 10 days to get here.
Yeah.
So I probably
You got plenty of time to
uh,
jet.
I lived all over the place, actually. I was born in Media, Pennsylvania. I lived in Fayetteville, New York, Schenectady, New York, Huntsville, Alabama, Slidell, Louisiana, New Orleans, Manhattan, Connecticut. I went to school in Vermont. I lived in London. I lived in Chicago. I lived in Seattle, and I've been in Los Angeles for 26 years.
Wow, you have been
Yeah.
all everywhere, man, to quote another Arkansan.
Yeah, as a kid, it was kind of interesting because we were uprooted. It seemed like every third Thursday, and moving to Connecticut from actually Manhattan briefly, and then Connecticut from the deep South
Wow, yeah,
was
but
a
that's
culture
a
shock,
little culture shock. Yeah.
real culture shock, and even more than culture shock. It was just like I talk like this.
Oh my goodness.
I like hi, I'm John,
Oh
and
my gosh.
the northern children beat that out of you. It's like
They will change your dialect quickly.
yeah, I
I
had a
mean,
southern accent and a lisp. So how the fuck I became an actor is a small miracle.
see, there you go. Well, that's how you became an actor, is learning to overcome those things. If you can
It was a little
disaffect,
bit.
yeah, if you can disaffect
It
your
was.
southern accent,
That was forced upon me, and my
oh,
parents were wise enough to recognize that I should have some speech therapy lessons.
cool.
And so yeah, so they got me some speech therapy, and then they had a mandatory school audition in I can't remember, 6th grade, I think, for the school play, which was A Christmas Carol. And
Oh,
because I
wow.
liked to read and I could read off the page with a certain amount of persuasiveness, I got cast in the lead. And up until then, it was like nobody talked to me. And suddenly I was like the star.
Ha
And so at that point, it was like, I'm an actor. I didn't care about the art. I just cared about, even in the sixth grade, I basically cared about the babes. It
Yeah,
was
the
like,
attention, the
yeah,
accolades.
care about the
Yeah,
attention. Now,
yeah.
awful, horrible. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity.
Well,
And
I
then
mean, it
eventually
got you here today.
it
Um,
got me here.
but
It got me here today. I know. The very pinnacle of my
this
career. I'm
podcast heard by 60 some odd people on a weekly basis. This
six,
is it. This is what you've worked
60.
for your entire life.
This is my entire life. I know. I'm missing the second half of the Packers game for you, baby. How about
Oh,
that?
see, that is great. I appreciate that because I saw
I
that
know.
was going on. I want to
Yeah.
do. I do want to say
Mhm.
with on the speech therapy thing. My wife is a speech therapist, so
Oh,
that
she is.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. She's been at it for my goodness 20 years now. Yeah.
Does she work with all ages, with primarily kids?
Kids, yeah. She works in a clinic up the road in Little Rock and contracts out of that and sees primarily kids on Medicaid. And so she
Huh?
works with them to, help them get their language sorted out.
What a great that is such a, I mean, it's funny because when I was a kid, of course you don't think about this, but years and years go by and I look back and I think I wish I remembered who that was, because that person or people, I'm sure there were more than one, had such a significant role to play in my life, and I was so young I
Yeah.
don't remember, but they
Well, and
were
here,
they were
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
That's well, cool, very cool. Yeah, no,
So
I
I
think
can't
she's really
speak to
good
my
at
own
it.
speech therapist, but let your wife know that I thank
You're
her for
grateful to the profession.
to the
Yeah,
profession, to the speech
yeah.
therapist of the world, yes, or
Well, I
speech.
think she's quite good at it, but
Is
that's
it a
I'm a little
speech
biased.
pathologist or speech therapist? What is the term?
So it's she is a oh my goodness. Oh, I can't remember. She
And
has a
you put
whole
family
little
first. You said you put
yeah,
family
no,
first.
she
Come
has a
on.
whole little thing that she has a degree, but it's a master's degree. She's a speech language pathologist.
Uh-huh.
So
Did you guys meet in college?
well, she was in college. I was out of college.
Uh-huh. Why are you
um,
laughing? Are you like 40
uh,
years older than she is? What are we?
no, no. So I was we were graduated a year apart, but we're only 6 months difference. She's 6 months younger, but it was enough to offset us in the school year. So I started college in '93, and in and out, off and on. College was not a good fit for Dan in the
Uh-huh.
beginning.
Uh-huh.
But I was in theater. That's what I went to theater for mass
Oh.
communication or school for theater and mass comm. So I was destined to never want to actually make any real money. Uh, but I took some
Theater is
time
the
off.
place to be.
Yeah, right. I took some time off and went and ran a few movie theaters to
Uh-huh.
get into the movie industry.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun actually to do that. I did that for a good bit.
And are you from
But
Arkansas?
I am, yeah. I've not actually lived anywhere else. I've been to a lot of places, but I've lived here in this area for all my life.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
but I've
Were you
I've
ever were
lived
you
all
ever
over the state.
were you ever tempted to live elsewhere?
Uh, it was on the table, but then I met Trish and we were here. So
Gotcha.
that
Do you
pretty
have,
well settled it.
do you have kids?
Yeah, we have three boys. Right
Bruce.
now, actually, we're quarantining because Trish and the two oldest boys had tested positive, and
Oh,
so the boys are on the tail end of a cold. So it's been mild symptoms. It's just been lingering.
yeah.
Then Trish, she didn't have any symptoms, and she had had one round of the vaccine. She's now had the
Uh-huh.
second dose. Uh, and then my youngest son and myself had tested negative. So we're like either super immune or just out of the woods. So. Uh, but my job
Wow.
requires I quarantine for another week yet. So
What's your job?
I am a technical expert for Apple Retail. I'm the
Oh,
guy you see at the Genius Bar.
oh, wow. Look at my phone. I have like a 1963 version. I keep
Oh man, that's
people.
fantastic. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
people
People
keep
don't let
like
that go, man.
I know. I just like people. It's like upgrades all the time. It's like, but my phone works just fine. It works fine.
If it does what you need it to, that's what you need it to
It
do.
does what it does what it needs. It's cracked and battered, but by
But
God,
it's yours. Yeah.
it's a poor thing, but
It's
I
yours.
know.
It's been with
Yeah.
you for all these years.
How old are your kids?
So the oldest Noah is 16 and a half, and
Mhm.
his middle brother Drew just turned 15 December. And then the youngest is Ben, he's 10. And
Wow.
yeah.
So Trish lives in a household with 4 males. She,
And the cat and the dog are also boys, neutered, but still boys. Yeah.
oh
So
my
she's
God,
she's
you can't.
overwhelmed.
I'm gonna send you a female goldfish or a female or
We had
something.
some goldfish at one point. I don't know what they. I didn't sex them, but we had a good tank of goldfish for a while until I killed them on accident. As is
Holy
always.
cow!
I had them for like 2 years too, man. I kept them alive, and I won't say they were trained, but I could tap on the glass, and they would all come to the glass, and then I
Yeah.
could stick my finger in the water, and they would come up and nibble on my finger even without any food. So I felt like I had them trained. They're just
Well,
goldfish,
they're not trained until they can go out and make a decent living. They're not trained. I'm
They're not
sorry.
trained. That's right. They're still just
None
costing
of them
money,
earned you a
right?
paycheck, did they? Yeah,
No, they
exactly.
didn't. They didn't.
All right, all right.
So how did you
Until
get? How'd you get
until the
into
goldfish
acting?
is bringing home the bacon.
She is
Uh,
actually. Well, that was part of
um,
the story. Is like when I met her, she was in school to get her master's, and I was like, I hear good things about speech pathology.
wow,
So
wow. Well,
I mean, I was no fool, and everything else just worked out
good
exceedingly
for
well.
you. I look forward to meeting her someday.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, I'll wait till your kids grow up, so there'll be a little more elbow room around the house, so I can.
That's well, yeah, it is. Love grows big in small houses, is what they say. So, but it's ours. That's the good part about it.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thanks,
So
man.
yeah.
So how'd you get to acting? Did you do that in school?
Well, as
I
I
mean,
say,
beside the sixth grade.
and that was a big part of it because I honestly I really dug that. It was fun, and my folks were very gracious. They saw that it was something I was excited by, and they were willing to feed that hunger. They set me up with acting classes. I was living in a suburban Connecticut town, so we were a bedroom community of Manhattan. So I started going into Manhattan to take classes with a couple of acting teachers there. My parents were very opposed to my ever pursuing it professionally, so it's not like they wanted or let me or would ever have considered allowing me to become a child actor, a professional child actor. And in fact, they insisted that I go to college when I wanted to go to drama school. And since I didn't have a penny to my name at 18, I bent to their will, and I went to a liberal arts college in southern Vermont, a school that had a lot of girls and didn't have grades, which were the criteria that were important to me. My parents were like, how come you're only applying to girls' schools? It's like, one, I need all the help I can get. And two, it's to fuck you up. Because it's like, I want to show you how little I care about having a college education. So I applied to Vassar and Smith and Bennington. So I get into Bennington, and I did not factor in lesbianism, unfortunately. I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. There are a lot of girls, but half of them aren't
Aren't on your side of the fence
yeah,
there,
no,
are
not
they?
exactly. In fact, I turned a few into lesbians in college. Robin Gustafson, if you're listening to this, she was straight on Friday night when I slept with her, and she was gay on Monday the next time I saw her. It was like,
Oh, John, what have you done?
that is a humbling experience. Um, and Bennington had a good drama department for a liberal arts college, a small school, but some really good teachers taught there, including a guy named Nicholas Martin, who went on to become a very well-known theater director in America. And it was pretty much all I ever really wanted to do. The only other thing that I considered doing was being a writer.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I always loved to read. I always wanted to either be a writer or a librarian or an actor. I loved libraries. I used to cut school to go to libraries. Like I call my mom and say, I didn't feel like going to school. I'm at the library.
Oh, that's amazing.
Not like what most kids cut school is like they go to the beach or, it's like I'd go to the library. And my mother would come nominally to pick me up, and then she'd hang out in the library with me all day. And we
What are
just
you gonna
wandered through
do?
the stacks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in a house full of books, and I had the good fortune and the misfortune to study with some really, really good writing teachers at Bennington College. But at that age, studying with Bernard Malamud, who I don't know if you've heard of him, but
That name sounds familiar.
he wrote The Natural, the movie The
Okay.
Natural. Yeah,
Okay.
which is a horrible movie for what the book was attempting to achieve. It actually took the opposite viewpoint of the book, very dark book. But Malamud was one of America's great post-war writers, and I studied with him, and I was 19 years old, and it's like studying acting with Olivier. If I had studied with the greatest acting teacher in the world at that age, I probably would have owned a delicatessen by now. So studying with a great writer made me go, all right, I'm not a writer.
I'm not a writer, right?
Not a writer.
Oh, and that's you touched on some interesting things there, John. Your love of libraries and you're skipping school. So in high school, 92, 93 was my senior year. And if you had completed your requirements by the time you were in your senior year, you could leave the seventh hour. You could go home on seventh period. You have 6 hours and you could leave. But my best friend had to ride the bus even as we were seniors because his car was never always working. And since he had to wait for the bus and didn't get to leave, we volunteered in the high school library. And
what a good friend
we
you
were. Yeah, well, and the library too, man. So we made good friends with the librarian, and we were there to usher in the first computer catalog system, along with the encyclopedia on CD-ROM.
Wow. Now
Oh,
I gotta say, I'm old, so I miss the old card catalog.
oh yeah, they don't
I
keep those
love
up to date most days
I
anymore.
loved all the old bullshit. I liked it when they stamped the books, and
Yep.
I
Well,
don't know.
that was the ember of a journey to come. And so the theater, the drama department at the University of Central Arkansas, and you mentioned, you had your instructor who was key in everything. I have Dr. Greg Blakey, who was there when I came in, and was there through all the many years that I was in and out of school, but always my guide. And he offered me a work study that was to set up a computer lab for computer aided drafting for set design.
Hmm.
And that was an Apple Macintosh lab. And so that has indirectly led to where I am today, but it passed through a stint at the library as the network administrator for a good run, specifically because that work experience was on the Mac. So it all kind of flows together,
Yes,
man.
I have to say, for me, it was like I wanted to be a librarian in the way that you're a librarian in the movie, where it kind of like, squeaky cart full of books and you're sitting there reading and you tell people about the good books. When I found out it was called library science for a reason, it was like, well, what do you
It's
have
a
to do?
lot. It's a
It's a
lot.
lot. It was like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore.
Nope. When
So
you get a
I
master's in
have a
library
library in my
science,
house. That's
you do. I
pardon?
see. It's wonderful to see so many books, so well
Well,
organized. I'm sure you know where everything
oh,
is
totally.
stored.
No.
Yeah.
This is one room of the house, and then
There's just books everywhere.
there's books everywhere, and it's
That's
total fucking
amazing.
chaos. It's total
That's
chaos.
fine.
I try to organize it periodically, but then I give up in despair. I have a
Well, it's pointless at that
rough
point.
sense of where some things are.
Well, that's all you need is I think it's in that stack. And then you go look for it. And if you're like me with my childhood set of encyclopedias, you go looking for a specific thing, but you end up rifling through all of the things before that thing, and
Yes.
not wasting your time, but
Or
spending it differently.
what's even worse is like I think I know where that book is. It's like behind 6 other stacks of books. I'll just go buy it again. That's what
Well,
I do.
then you have a copy to give to a friend.
I've definitely
So
got. I know there are some books where it's like I probably have 4 copies of that
that would
somewhere.
be probably the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for me if I had to nail it down. I've had multiple copies of that book for sure, and as many copies of that as I have had of Pearl Jam's album 10.
Well,
Just
maybe I should say, have you ever heard? Have you ever had? I have the complete radio scripts for the radio program of the Hitchhiker's Guide to
I
the Galaxy.
haven't heard them. I know they exist, but
Yeah.
I appreciate every iteration of that because Douglas Adams once said, and this has helped me embrace fandom in general overall. But he once said that he loves every part of Hitchhikers that's ever been made because each one it doesn't have to be consistent with each other because it's not the same story. Each story is told differently because the book is not the movie, is not the TV show, is not the radio drama, because they're inherently and intrinsically different media. That means the story can be different and it's fine. They all exist. And I was like, well, that's too easy, man.
Well, yes, once you accept it's a fiction, it's like, well, it's a fiction. So,
It's a fiction, you
it's
know?
like, yeah, it's like Sherlock Holmes. I mean, the gajillion iterations of Sherlock Holmes. It's like, as a reader, I will say the only thing for me is that I think some of the, it's like, there have been a lot of people who've kind of riffed off Twain's Huckleberry Finn. And of course, when you try and riff off the great writers, it's like, this is why Mark Twain was Mark Twain.
Exactly.
Um, you know,
not everybody gets to be that.
yeah, and you know, Conan Doyle had a special. There was something special about the Sherlock Holmes stories. That's hard to
And
capture.
that's so in those, those exist to themselves as the original, the original point. But some of those movies, like I enjoyed the Robert Downey Jr. movies just because they were fun.
Yes,
it's absurd, but it was fun.
Yeah. Now, my favorite of the Sherlock Holmes movies. Have you ever seen the 7% Solution?
I don't believe I have.
Oh, check that out. Check out the 7% Solution. And then there's another one with I'm gonna have, it was made in the 70s, and I want to say Peter Cook was in it, and a guy named Robert Blakely. I think I've got that name right. Maybe it's Blakely, but that was also a marvelous sort of not exactly a spoof, but it was an unconventional take on Sherlock Holmes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, anytime you want to tell a story differently, I'm ready for that. I don't fret reboots. I get tired of them because, like, okay, we've done this over again. But as far as, am I going to be upset that you're trying to do this thing that I love in a new way?
It depends. It's like, I don't need to see somebody else's version of Casablanca.
Nope, no, no, you have absolutely, you don't remake The Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah, there are certain things, it's like, that is a fucking work of art, just leave it, walk away. You're only gonna fucking spoil it.
Yeah, and and to that too, that's a film worthy of conservation, not restoration. Films like that don't need to be cleaned up too much, and when they're digitized, they need to be preserved digitally, but true to the format, true to the media. You can over bake these things these days, and go crazy. And like you said, while maybe limited by the materials at the time, that movie was made the way it was made for a reason. Those people were craftsfolk, and they didn't do it on accident.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but there's no, I mean, there's certain things. It's like Casablanca. I mean, there's no one should ever try and do Bogart.
Sacrosanct, man. It's sacrosanct.
Yeah.
You don't redo that.
But I would agree.
Our
like
modern
Spider-Man. It's like, I personally don't care, but if they want to make like a gajillion versions of Spider-Man, it's like, I don't think Spider-Man is, like, no, you fucked with the original Spider-Man.
That's what Spider-Man is for. That's what comic book movies are for. That's what Star Trek and Stargate and all of these science fiction franchises are for.
Although I will say, one of the things that's hard for me is, as a kid, having been a comic book collector. And so, you'd go through, and I'm 60, so I grew up in the 70s and 60s and 70s. And so for me, they would shift the tone and the tenor and the artwork and the writing a bit for Batman or Superman or the Marvels, but they wouldn't like suddenly like completely throw the fucking storyline out and then start it all over again. So these days it's like, I don't know fucking idea. It's like Batman. I don't know, like, which Batman?
DC like reboots they reboot their books.
Yeah, it's like they killed Superman like 9 times and Lois Lane
loses the weight.
Yeah, so that's. I'm not sure I could be a comic book fan anymore. If I was a kid, I'd feel like, wait, what?
And they're so damned expensive, man. Have you seen the cost of a comic? It's like $4.
12 cents. I remember when it went from 10 to 12 cents. And it was like, 12 cents?
What's wrong with these guys?
I know. Then it went to 15 cents.
That's a little thick on the book there,
Yeah, which, back in the day, for me, it was like 15 cents. Fuck. We used to, my parents were very gracious about this. They fed all of my addictions. So I, as a comic book collector, they let me kind of put advertisements in and kind of fish around to see if I could buy people's collections. Yeah. And back then you could buy, a collection for, wasn't that expensive.
20
So when
bucks.
yeah, well, like, like $100 and you could buy,
Yeah.
I mean, I sold my comic book collection at my parents' insistence, which to this day, it's like, fuck you. If I'd
I
held
still
on,
have some of mine. Still
I
have
have
some of mine.
I have some of mine, but if I had held on to the whole thing, which I sold for around $5,000 in 1978,
Oh my goodness.
well, of course, you never know what you could get on the, trying to sell a collection these days, but
Be some choice stuff in
a lot more than $5,000.
It'd be a lot more than $5,000. That's like me and having been able, if I'd been able to invest in Apple stock in 1996
I know.
for $10,000, it'd be a lot different conversation.
My parents, when we moved from Louisiana, briefly they had an apartment in New York, and the opportunity to buy that apartment, like in, I don't remember where the fuck it was. I was a kid, but they said, no, we don't want to live in New York, and so they let it go. And I think now it's like,
yeah, prime real estate, retirement. You could be retired.
Yeah, they bought a house in Connecticut in 1970. No, what has it been? 1971, I guess. Yeah, 1971 for $78,000. It was like 4,000 square feet on 3 acres in the middle of a fucking forest.
Dang.
$78,000.
That's kind of a nice getaway now, I bet, though.
Now I'm sure it's been like, it's probably a $3.5, $4 million, $5 million, blah, blah, blah.
We've been all chopped up.
And we lived in a forest. This woman owned this great swath of woods. She lived in New York, and she had owned the property, but not the house, peculiarly. I never really understood that. But, we were essentially surrounded by forest. It wasn't developed. So, deer in our backyard, and we got to wander around in the woods every time. And I later on heard that, unfortunately, when she died, of course, the property got sold, and it all became a standard suburban subdivision.
A development, yeah.
Yeah. But, it's funny. I had a magical childhood. And
playing in the woods.
Yeah. Just I always felt very blessed that my parents loved me, and I got to kind of live in some really cool places and bop around the world, and for a period of time, I got to live in a forest. It was great. It was like, it was cool.
That's basically what I did growing up out at my grandma and grandpa's house, my nanny and daddy's house. We played out in the woods, ran around out there. You just show up out there, and you would go, and you didn't come back unless you were hurt or it was dark. And it was just out there having just a good old time, being rompy out in the woods. I don't think folks get enough of that these days.
No, I know. I don't either. It's been, I get it. I mean, it's a change, and the world has changed. But yeah, it's growing up. When I grew up, it was like, it's like, what'd you do all day? It's like you'd come home from whatever the fuck you were doing as a kid. It'd be like, after that, I broke into the house, and I climbed that tree, and I fell off, and we did that. It's like
my goodness.
Nobody cared. You were just. It was. Yeah.
Now we've got the video games and the VR headsets
and helicopter parenting, and
so we avoid that. I don't got time for that. I don't got time to hover over my kids.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure there are people who don't do it, but I also, in fairness, I mean, I live in Los Angeles, and it's a car culture. It's really it's just really hard for kids to their activities kind of require somebody's got to take them.
Yeah, and that's been, and that's another thing that seems a little different these days. My oldest Noah, he got his license, but he hasn't really been, hot to drive like I was. Man, I couldn't wait to get out of the house.
I couldn't wait.
Just go do something. But everything they do is here in the house now. You got Netflix and Disney Plus and this and that and the other, and they got their, what are they? Everything is online, and I guess it's part of it's like, maybe that's the new social normal, and it's only weird because it's not us.
Yeah, I guess so. I know. But I don't know. I felt the same way. It was like, for one thing, I just was like, like my parents just fine. But it's like at 16, it was like, I want to be with my friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right. There was no, I guess you can now be with your pals. You can Zoom with your pals. You can be online with your pals.
Yeah, and I am, so it's not like it's unfamiliar territory for me. I mean, most of my
I wanted to
in
chase girls at 16. That's what I
I
wanted to do.
did too. I
I didn't
really
catch
did.
any, but I wanted to
No,
chase them. And
I
I
was
knew
very
you
bad
could.
at the catch.
I was very bad at the catch too, but I knew you couldn't chase them until you left the house. It's like
No, you had to
that.
leave the house,
You had to leave the house. You had to have a car.
and you
You
would
had to
do
drive
stupid
around and like,
stuff.
oh, it's totally.
So you talk about going and breaking into the house or whatever. In the town I grew up in, there was at the time it was an abandoned hospital. It was the biggest building, well, one of the biggest buildings
That's
in
what I
town.
meant, by the way. I didn't mean breaking into like people's
Yeah,
occupied house.
the places you shouldn't be. Yeah,
Yeah, because
places
that
you
was all.
should.
That was like, yeah, stuff when you were growing up. It was like old man Jones's house hasn't been lived in for years. Let's,
Totally haunted. It's totally haunted,
yeah.
by the way. But this meant the classic, complete horror story haunted building. It's up on a hill at the backside of town, overlooking everything. It's a hospital. People died there. It's been
Oh yeah,
abandoned.
mental institution.
Oh yeah, everybody's crazy. The nuns went nuts or whatever. So as a band of Scooby Doo teenagers, we would go there in the day. We'd go there in the evening. One time we went there in the middle of, well, not the middle of the night, but late at night, without any light because we knew our way. And this was completely and totally stupid dangerous because to get to the roof, you had to climb over an open, a broken elevator shaft, 4 stories to get to the ladder to the roof. And we did it like it was, oh yeah, because muscle memory, we told ourselves.
Yeah.
We could have died, man.
Well, I know. And that's the thing. It's like, if you make it through your childhood alive, it's like, whoosh.
Yeah. No, it's that feeling of running a red light or a stop sign.
I think about that all the time. There's this wonderful book by Bill Bryson called A Short History of Nearly Everything. You heard of him?
I haven't.
He's a wonderful writer. You'd really dig him. He wrote a wonderful book about a guy who hikes the Appalachian Trail with his friend. They made kind of a shitty movie out of it with Nick Nolte and Robert Redford. But the book is great. And he's a very funny writer. But he also wrote a book. Basically, his premise was like, I'm a scientific ignoramus and I want to learn about the sciences. And I'm going to write a book, the kind of book that I would like to read that is, not too smart and funny, but that gives me a grounding. Great book. And the first sentence of the book is, congratulations, reader, it's a miracle you're here. When you think of all the things that had to happen, all the peculiar little incidents that had to happen for bajillions of years to create you, the fact that your father and mother had to like go sproing, in and of itself, and the fact that you didn't fucking kill yourself somewhere along the way, it's a miracle you're here.
Pretty brilliant. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I like to tell folks is like, you have to, I think that you have to have a near existential crisis, realizing your own insignificance in the larger existence, right? And part of that comes from the fact that everything you're made out of took 14.5 billion years to get here. And like you said, it's all this, happenstance back to, like Carl Sagan said, if you want to make an apple pie, you got to start by creating the universe. John Billingsley doesn't get here talking to Dan Decker without all of those things.
Well, and my father was gay, so it's even more, it's more miraculous that I'm here.
See, against all the opposite odds, even.
Yeah. My father was a gay sailor. I think he only had sex twice, so it's really a miracle that my brother and I actually
both resulted in he was good at it apparently, even if it wasn't his cup of tea. Yeah. That's we had our first 2 kids 19 months apart. We realized we were real good at that, so we put the hiatus on it. We were like, well, we don't have any trouble getting to that point if we want. So
I had the snip at a very
I thought about that, and at this point I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah, clearly you like kids. I like other people's kids.
Because you give them away. It's their trouble.
Yes, and it's like they remind me of how happy I am. I don't have my own. It's like
and that's the reason I'm here to populate the world on your behalf.
Thank you.
I hope I don't screw it up.
I appreciate that. No, I'll tell Bonnie that. It's like, hey, Dan had one of ours for us. So
Yeah, whichever one you want. I mean, Ben's
the
probably
smartest one, the guy's got the most potential. Let us claim that one.
Okay.
You don't have to tell me which one
I
that
won't
is.
mark them today. Yeah, no,
Oh,
I'll just a child shows up in the mail. You're like, oh, this is our.
I don't want to know. I just want to know that you know.
Oh, they're out here. So yeah,
I just want the credit.
You've orphaned a child in Arkansas.
Yeah, I tried to get a snip when I was out of college, and the snip guy said, "I'm not going to give you a snip. You're too young." It was like, who are you to tell me that I don't want a snip? He said, "You're going to change your mind." It's like, oh, I wish I could search you down, like
and say, by the way, no deathbed conversions for you.
No, so I eventually got one. But, yeah.
Well, that's being responsible, knowing if you are parent material is a real lost art.
It is that, and I also always really felt for women having to bear the
all of it,
onerous
literally.
responsibility. Yeah, and I mean, it ain't from an IUD to being on the pill. I mean, the various methodologies that women have to employ for birth control are not without their pernicious side effects. And condom, that's a disaster. So yeah.
there's like one near fail-safe method, and it's on the
yes. And for the 60 people who are watching who did not expect us to talk about vasectomies, I will say, if there's one person out there who's thinking about it, it's simple, it's quick, it takes a tremendous load off your mind. And when I had my vasectomy, the guy said, "You want to watch?" It was like, I don't really want to watch, but I'm comforted that it's that easy.
I'm at ease that it's possible. Yes.
Yeah.
Was it like? Well, I don't know. Was it laparoscopic at that time, or?
Yeah.
And even then, wow.
Yeah, and it was I mean, it was really painless. I mean, there's some soreness afterwards for a few days. It's like,
I had a friend do it. He was in his early 20s, and I was the one that took him to his appointments. And he got to sit on a bag of ice and take some pretty great meds.
Yeah, for a couple of days. And if you have a girlfriend, she's really grateful, so she lavishes you with great attention.
Yeah, and then when everything's healed up, it's ready to rock and roll.
I know. And it also, if you were bound and determined to not have children, it would mean that in your courting years afterwards, you could kind of get that paid, like out on the first date. It was like, by the way, I've had a vasectomy, so let's just so let's not waste time. There's any part of you. Maybe not the first.
It's definitely, if that's going to be a deal breaker, just get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way. Let's not waste time, because you're clearly a big eater, and I'm paying for this meal, and it's like, I don't want to take you out twice.
Well, you gotta have some bar to entry, and that's that's one of the things in one of the D&D groups that I'm playing in. We lost several characters. The players stayed, but the characters met ill-fated ends, and so the three of us who have survived through the entire campaign to this point decided that there has to be an application process, right? You have to meet a threshold. Tell me who you've killed. What are your adventures? Are you going to be able to get into this party? And it's very much the same as being up front with that at the beginning.
I always used to ask my dates, tell me who you've killed first off, before we go any further. I want to hear about your kills.
Yeah.
And I've had a vasectomy.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic court.
It's a miracle I'm married.
Courtship 101. I know. Well, obviously, you wouldn't want to mess with your wife. If
I married a murderous woman who didn't want children. I know.
Exactly. Perfect. It's perfect.
I know. They're hard to find. I tell you.
It is. These days and ages.
Swipe right. It's like, no.
Everybody's like, murder seems so,
no one wants to murder anybody. A lot of women who want to breed and apparently don't like killing people. It's like, oh, Jesus.
What the hell, man? So did you ever do anything nerdier than, act? Play
I don't think acting
games.
I'm not sure I think acting is nerdy. I don't know what nerdy is exactly.
Well, you have theater nerds, and those are the folks who go, are in theater.
I always thought, nerdiness to me had less to do with what you did than whether or not in your behaviors you didn't demonstrate a sense of humor.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I always kind of felt, to
Ah,
me,
yeah.
what made a nerd was that classic kind of, well, I'm not entirely sure I understand. Why wouldn't one? You know?
The well actuallys of the world.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, exactly. It's like, uh, so I don't ever think about nerdiness having to do with, what your interests are so
Mhm.
much as just your affect. Um,
Well, besides
so
acting in books and the library, did you have
I
any
like to
other
travel.
interests?
That's probably, which is, I mean, I'm very, very blessed in my life. I have absolutely nothing to complain about. So, this COVID shit, as awful as it is, there's so many people who have it, so much worse. People whose livelihoods are, potentially gone. I mean, restaurateurs, people in the arts. I don't know. They've got to wonder, like, does my line of work return, and when?
Yeah.
I'm very blessed. I will just play through that phone. The phone is
Yeah,
ringing. Let it be
absolutely.
known.
Let it be known.
Pay no attention to the phone. That's the bat phone, and I'm not even fucking answering it. That's how little I care about what's happening in Gotham City. It's like,
It's the commission. You're like, screw
yeah,
that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. What, don't you have a police force? It's like, what do we pay these people for?
Don't Gotham Cityans, don't they citizens pay taxes?
I know, Jesus. Um, but it is of all the things that I miss. I miss socializing, and I really miss traveling.
Yeah.
Uh, Bonnie and I had a really nice long career. We didn't have kids, so we saved our dough, and we had a really fun couple of years planned for, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go there, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go there. Yeah, I don't know when
You
that's
got to spend time with each other, just not
we
in
do.
other places.
And all joking aside, the other thing that I've also always been involved in is volunteering for various social service organizations, or volunteering for political causes. So I do a lot of volunteer work. I still do that. I'm the president of the board of directors of an organization called the Hollywood Food Coalition, which essentially attempts to rescue and share food all over the city of Los Angeles with
I have heard of
various.
that. Like
Yeah,
the
it's
leftovers from restaurants and things like that. And
well, yeah, I mean, it started actually 34 years ago as essentially a means to provide hot multi-course meals to people who are experiencing homelessness. And for many, many years, we had a nightly, and we still have a nightly, what we call a nightly meal engagement program, or a community dinner program. When my wife and I got involved 4 years or so ago, and we started trying to kind of encourage the organization to rescue more food and eventually to share more food, we we kind of grew out its mission. I say we as if we did it ourselves. We didn't. It was a wonderful group of people that
right.
have collaborated on growing its mission out. So now, in addition to continuing to serve a hot meal every night of the week, 7 nights a week, we also share food that we rescue from all sorts of places: grocery stores, restaurants. People do canned food drives. We rescued a lot from TV shows and movies, private parties, any number of social programs that exist to create prepackaged meals that we participate in, farm to table boxes that you usually think of as going to food pantries. We rescue some of that. And we share that food with all sorts of different groups based on their needs. So some groups, like, for instance, there are a lot of organizations we work with that work with kids on the street. They had a kitchen, but they didn't have anybody to cook, and they didn't really have any food. So we helped to make sure that they had a cook. And once they got a cook, we said, we're going to get you what you need to make a nice lunch for these kids every day. So they're able
Wow.
to actually make a nice lunch. Because of that, kids who are expected to come to a program, take classes, la 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 la, try and improve their lives, but we're probably naturally enough going, oh, well and good, but you don't feed me.
Yeah.
Now they get a good
Yeah.
meal.
Yeah.
And our premise is start with the meal, good meal, and then build on that.
Well, and
So
you can't learn if you're hungry,
exactly.
whatever time of day it is or whatever the subject is.
Yeah, I know. I always tell people, it's like, imagine whatever it is you're doing it not having eaten for 14 hours. Think
Yeah.
about your level of concentration.
Yep.
You know.
It's not easy for us. We are able as well-fed individuals to recognize that sometimes why we're mad is because we're hungry.
Yeah.
And that is in the moment, oh, I'll just go grab a banana real quick,
Yeah, and
and
one in
take it for
one in
granted.
one in four. I mean, it was one in five, and now because of this global crisis, one in four American kids, and the numbers are really staggering internationally. One in four American kids is food insecure, meaning that
Yeah.
when they wake up, it's not that they're necessarily going to go hungry, but they don't know where they're going to eat, when they're going to eat, what they're going to eat. Will it be enough? Is it going to be nutritious? Is it going to be junk?
Think about that though,
Richest country in the world.
John. 25% of our children, which that's easily what, 75 million people.
Yeah, and
Uh,
think about these kids who are expected to go to school,
yeah,
and it's like, I mean, the my anger, and we're not touching on political stuff, but
it's okay. We align. Don't worry.
okay. I mean, my rage at what we have basically chosen to value as a culture, and what
Thank
we have
you.
chosen to turn our back on, is knows no bounds. So I do put a fair amount of time and my energy into that stuff.
And I appreciate that because there are those of us who, will when we can, and do what we can. I support a lot of charities that I believe in financially because I can't be there actively. And so for you to do that work for those folks, to boost that out there, is very important. Because it's good to know that good is going on, when it's
Yeah,
just, you got to have that hope. It's nice
yeah,
to know.
and I do believe that most human beings. I mean, the thing that gives people the most, I think, candidly, the most joy is the sense that um, they have a significant role to play in their society. That they feel like they make a difference. I think people want and need to make a difference, to feel like they make a difference. And I think there are lots of ways for people to make a difference on whatever time frame in which they are working, in terms of number of hours they might have available. I'm very very blessed because at my age, and not and having I still have a career, but it doesn't the main thing in my life. I have a lot of time,
Yeah.
and so it was important to me to kind of use that time to do more. So
So as someone, I can't take credit for this, and I can't remember who I learned it from, uh, but it's that, time can never, uh, it can't be saved, and it can't be wasted. It can only be spent, and so value how you spend it.
invested.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Invest your
Uh,
time wisely. No, I know.
well, it's a journey too, to kind of, especially in a capitalist society, to kind of factor what is your time worth, especially in these conversations around, what should be a morally minimum wage for someone to
Yeah,
be able to live on in this country.
yeah,
But uh, placing a value on an hour of your life, find a way to give that some weight, find a way to know what that is worth to you,
I always thought
because
that It's a Wonderful Life, to me, for all that maybe people call it, Capricorn, Frank Capra, the director, and
yeah.
to me, while some of his movies might be a little on the corny side, I cannot watch It's a Wonderful Life without crying like a fucking baby every single time.
Yeah, yeah, it's so great.
Because of yeah, I mean, it has so many, to me, deeply profound things to say about how you have to find your own Clarence the angel that lives inside of you, that's able to speak to you, that tell you that just because you don't see the good you do doesn't mean you ain't doing good. It's like what you just said. Your wife, the speech pathologist, I don't know the name of the woman who was my speech pathologist, but because that woman, when I was in the fifth and sixth grade, worked with me to correct my lisp and my other issues, it helped give me the confidence to believe that I could act. And whether or not my acting career has, that much meaning, so many things flowed from those actions that have touched a lot of people. And that woman wouldn't know that, you know? Your wife touches people in ways that profoundly transform thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. And I just find that to be the thing. It's why I think Trump is so pernicious. It's why I think the people that are behaving in the way they're behaving right now, by refusing to recognize the evil that he represents, as if tax cuts mitigates against cruelty. It doesn't.
Right, it doesn't.
Cruelty spreads cruelty. and thousands and thousands and millions of people are deleteriously and negatively affected by his brutality and by
Mhm.
his crudity and by his racism. And I don't give a flying fuck how much more money you're saving.
Nope.
You know?
I mentioned to Trish the other day. I was like, imagine this cult of personality put to good. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's I don't know if a cult of personality works for good though. You know.
Theoretically, Jesus. I mean,
Yeah. Right.
I'm not a believer, but
Right.
that's the thing that
Neither
I
am I.
think about. It's like you can't call yourself Christians. You can't, because the whole fucking point of Christ is supposed to be benevolence. It's supposed to be kindness. You don't get to put behavior aside and look at ends as if they're separate from the way the ends are achieved. That is not
I
Christian.
don't. Nope. It's very distorted, the messaging. And
Holy fuck.
it is, and that's unfortunate because, like I said, imagine that cult of personality put to good, and that counters with knowing that folks like yourself are doing good with what they can and what they have, matters all the more,
Yeah. I
because
mean,
we can
yeah.
only chip away at it.
No, I know.
You and I don't have that power.
No, we can't. But that is the other thing that I loved about It's a Wonderful Life, is that you recognize that one person's the nature of how one person can change a world is so much greater than we perceive, because we don't we are incapable as an individual of seeing ripples. We don't. The ripple effect is so much vaster.
Right.
You know?
That was a lesson, and some listeners, if you've heard this before, well, too bad you hear it again. But that was a lesson taught by the Grand Master of one of the martial arts I studied. Was that even if you're the only, as the instructor, even if you're the only person in the dojo, you hold class. You are doing your material, teaching yourself, refreshing yourself, because if a new student walks by and they see an empty school, they won't come in. But if a new student walks by and sees an active school and they come in and they learn from you, and then that student maybe becomes the next grandmaster or a grandmaster, then imagine the lives that you touched from that, like you said, ripple effect.
Yeah.
It just branches out from there. And every little thing, I've been reached, a lot of folks have reached out to me. And like I say, I joke about the size of this audience, 30, 40, 60 people, depending on.
Yeah, well, 30, 40, you said 60, 60. Come
Yeah,
on.
just being honest.
By
But
the minute, it's like it's
it
8
fluctuates.
guys. It's just like
It fluctuates. But the folks who've reached out to me and said that, I listen to every episode. You're who I go running with. The fact that you're open about this, or you and so whoever talked about these things, and they reach out and say, hey, that voice matters. Your voice mattered to me, and that's all it takes. Just one person who isn't sad because they heard you and I talk later. That's fine with me. I hope it's fine with
if
you,
anybody
because I
calls
think
and
a lot
says,
of people are
"Wow,
going to be happy.
that really Billingsley really bummed me out," I was like, I was having a good day, and then I heard him, and
And then
like,
I heard John Billingsley, like, son of a bitch,
I had a because I always say yes to a podcast. I'm always happy to gab, and there's a lovely gal. We had a long conversation.
Oh, Brooke?
Brooke, yeah, and I was like,
I know Brooke.
She got me off on dystopia, so it was like I was like,
man.
So I thought, I was like,
me and Brooke have been we've been in contact for some time. She calls me Space Dad. So
Space Dad, okay.
Yeah. She hits me up from time to time. One of those folks who reaches out and says, what your advice matters to me, the way you see things matters to me, and would you help me with this problem? She's one of them, and she's a lot of fun.
She has a lot of fun. But I'm fairly convinced that a number of people, if they listen to that whole podcast, probably threw themselves off bridges in their respective towns. It's like I was in a particularly like the world is fucked mood.
It's not yet, but we're working on it. I used to throw this hashtag out on Twitter called Dystopian Hellscape Bingo.
Yeah, I know, man. It's like just the knife's edge we're walking on right now. It's just fucking amazing, terrifying.
Just over the horizon, though. Everything is just over the horizon.
Speaking
of travel,
one way or the other. I'm not sure what's over that horizon. I eek. I hope it's.
You know, you were you like to travel. I haven't traveled. I was going to travel this year. We were going to go to London and Paris in the
Uh,
spring, but maybe not. We're probably going to go next year in the 2022. But I'm with you on
from your
that.
mouth to God's ears. I hope.
Yeah, let's hope, right? Yeah. You know, last year we just missed we were going to go see Hamilton in St. Louis, and
Uh,
we were going to go to the parade in New York in the fall.
yeah.
Obviously, none of that happened. But you know, where we're at right now, folks, if you're listening to this, we're still on the edge of getting the vaccine rolled out. It won't be but a few weeks, so I don't imagine everything's going to be sunshine and roses by the time everyone hears this. But John's no longer talking about the dystopian hellscape.
Only because you're not leading me down that path, but I could easily go down the
The
path.
dark path. The dark path.
I still see a Republican Party that is unwilling to recognize climate change is real and needs to be grappled with.
Or just reality in general, if we're being
Just
honest.
reality in general. Yes, I know. No, there's still, yeah, we won't. I just did 2 hours on dystopia. So for those people who are like, yeah, it's like I'll spare them dystopia.
There's plenty of that. So, but I mean, you mentioned that you still get work. Are you actively working on anything right now?
Not really. I mean, it's a combination of not having as much ambition as I did when I was younger because I don't need the dough. It's in part because Hollywood is ageist. There just isn't as much work as you get older. Some of it is also, I always liked to go into the room to audition. I'd like to meet the producers and audition with the material because whether they thought I was right or not, they're going to have to watch the whole audition. Nowadays, everything is on tape. And when you put yourself on tape, frankly, you don't really know whether the person who was watching the audition is actually watching it. It's very possible that they start it and they go, he's not what I'm looking for, and they click it off. So I confess that for me, putting myself on tape, which is pretty much what audition is going to be, maybe forever. I don't know if they're ever going to go back into auditioning in the room. Really, I don't like it. I mean, I'll do it, but I just don't get that enthused about it.
Well, and I think too, like some of the feedback that you get as an actor in that scenario is watching them react to your audition.
Yeah, and they can
You
give
can
you a
read
note.
that. Yeah, yeah,
They can give
exactly.
you a note, which is, to me, it's like a lot of what I always felt like my strong suit was. If they said, yeah, do this, I could take the note right away. A lot of actors aren't facile that way. They can do a great audition, but if you said, I want you to do it with this adjustment, they can't take the adjustment. You can't, adjustments fly out the window when you're putting yourself on tape. So
Yeah.
I have no, I will only say that I had a fair amount of success as an actor for many years going into the room. I have not tended to have as much success putting myself on tape. I think my auditions are still good, but I just don't think it is, I will book as at high a percentage.
Hmm.
And so that coupled with the other factors leads me to care less.
Sure. Yeah.
And acting, like so many other things, it's a squeaky wheel business. If you want to work, you kind of got to knock, knock, knock on a lot of doors all the time. When I was younger and I cared and I wanted to make the dough, I was a good squeaky wheel. I nagged my agents. I went to the fucking parties. I kept track of what was around in town. I cultivated the casting directors and sent out postcards. I tap danced. I don't do any of that. So I work every now and again, but and also COVID. It's
Yeah.
like I don't. We did. My
That
wife and I did a
exceeded
show.
the, yeah.
Yeah, we did a pilot for a show that maybe it'll get picked up in the fall in Colorado. Lovely people, but being on a set in the COVID world is a pain in the fucking ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be. I mean, part of what makes acting fun and what makes the business fun is the sociability of it.
Right.
It's a big crowd of people who you like to hang out with. You hang out around the crafty table, you hang out in the chairs, and you yammer at each other, and blah blah blah. going to work as an actor where you have to be in a pod and, put a bubble over your fucking head and you can't talk to anybody. And it's like, you've kind of sucked half the fun out of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and two, I'd say, man, I definitely don't think that it's the video aspect of your interaction that, like doing a audition to tape. I can tell that it's your charisma. You bounce really well off of other people, and I think that's a lot of probably where your strength comes from. You
Well,
play well with others.
it also, I'll be honest with you. Here's the thing. I had a casting director say this once. She said, look, the thing is, if I give 10 actors all the time in the world and they have multiple takes, it's like, I'm going to put myself in tape. I don't like that one. I put myself in tape. I don't like that one. And they can perfect it. And I get these 10 tapes to look at. I can't really tell who is capable of showing up on a set and doing it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my gag was always, I feel really good about walking into an audition, knowing my material and doing it. And if I get a note, I'll do that. That weeded out certain people. People would come in, they get flustered, or they wouldn't have quite, they don't really know the material, or they don't take a note. It's really hard when you're competing with people who are, have been in the career for a while, and everybody gets to put themselves on tape because we've all collectively raised the bar, together to a certain level where it's harder to stand out.
And then what if you, when you show up for the job and you're not what was on the tape, or you can't meet that, whose time's all been wasted? Everybody's time's all been wasted.
Yeah, I mean, I have not had that experience. I mean, I get cast every now and again from tape, but it just isn't. I think the other thing, candidly, is my wife and I won. I love to travel, but I don't want to be separated from my wife for great periods of time. So it's like, I don't want to get a movie in Bulgaria,
Yeah.
I don't want to get a series that's going to shoot in Richmond, Virginia. So there's certain things I'm just going to turn down. So between that,
all in LA now, right?
Yeah. So all these factors that come together, it just means that there's that much less available. And I never got to a high enough plateau in the business, a high enough rung on the ladder where I just get offered work regularly, which some people get to the point where it's like there's enough work simply because people say, here's a gig, here's a gig, here's a gig. I get offers every now and again, but not consistently.
Now, do you like doing conventions?
I do. I like doing conventions because it's low vaudeville for me. Yeah. I always wanted to be a vaudevillian. I always wanted to have like baggy pants and a seltzer bottle. So it's like to have 55 minutes on stage where people are already inclined to like you, and they are inclined to give you a lot of permission to misbehave. Yep. I find that delightful. And I bring my wife.
And she can come too.
She can come, and she was on a show called Chuck, so she's got a little bit of. She's got a little bit of name recognition in her own right.
You can throw a little sci-fi clout too.
Yeah, a little sci-fi clout, and she started by heckling me from the back of the audience, and then I brought her up on stage, and then and we haven't done one in a couple of years now because of COVID, but up until we stopped, we were like we'd chase each other around. She would never let me bring out cream pies. That's always been my like.
One cream pie, but no.
Which lucky audience member?
No cream pies.
No, she wouldn't let me get cream pies.
There's always room for the post-COVID cream pie return to vaudeville. Maybe you could talk her into some sort of spectacular.
We're going on a cruise. I've never been on one of these Star Trek cruises, so we're going.
Are you going to do the cruise?
We're going to do the cruise, and we were supposed to do it in 2020.
Yeah.
And of course, it got canceled. And they debated putting it into 2021 and smartly decided, 2022.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed.
I looked at that. I should probably go get a ticket before they're out. I have to talk to my wife first. So.
I think they may be sold out. But,
yeah, probably. I'm probably too late.
But I don't know. I'm sure people fall out all the time. And
get on the waiting list.
Again, I still am not entirely. We'll see. But
yeah, it's still dicey for 2021.
Yeah, so far, like 5 as of today, and in part, I kind of pay a lot of attention to this because my wife and I are actually kind of, quasi frontline workers because we work
Yeah, exactly.
in the streets. So, so I kind of have to be invested in this. I'm trying to get my shots, and I fit into the first tier category, but I can't fucking get my shots
Yeah.
because there's just not enough doses for the need. Only 5.8% of the American population has had their first shot,
Wow.
and 9.8% of the tier one. But when you think about when you factor in one, you're going to have to get everybody inoculated twice,
Yep.
and there are new strains, and
Yep.
we don't know whether the vaccines are going to work with these new strains. And a good chunk of the population has decided for political reasons that they don't want to participate in either inoculations or in good behaviors.
Yeah.
It is, I confess, it is a little hard for me to be optimistic that we are going to turn a corner this year.
It is, yeah, no, and that's when my last year when we were sent home in March, till Apple figured out how we were going to approach this, and fortunately, they did all the right things regards to their employees. But my manager, she asked, and she said, "Oh, do you think we'll be done with this in August?" And I was like, "Oh no, we're not gonna be done with this in August." And then
Yeah.
it was even worse than that. But
Yeah.
uh, all we can do is our part. I mask up. I'm getting the vaccine as soon as I'm eligible. My wife has already gotten both doses, thank goodness.
Oh, good.
And and with myself and Ben, who knows? Maybe it's not something we're susceptible to, or we've just been lucky with a mild case and are immune now. Who knows? But it's just like anything positive you can do in your life. It's the 3 feet, the 6 feet around you is where you have the influence, and hopefully there are people in that bubble that you can help.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that, but I don't really believe it, but I
Yeah.
hope that the Biden administration and the nature of the messaging and the seriousness of purpose and the attention to detail and the nature of a federally led effort that actually tries to make sure that the states have a partner to figure out how to get the distribution working more effectively. I hope that'll turn a corner. But my concern is that the political well has been poisoned to such an extent that simply because it's coming from Biden or it's coming from the Democratic Party, you're telling me to say A, B, you're telling me to spit, I'm going to hop, whatever.
Yep. Just to be obstinate.
Well, just because
And
everything is political now. I mean, it's like,
it is, sadly, so
it's
much.
just, yeah.
And it's not, it's their nuance is lost, and that's regrettable, honestly.
It's so self-destructive. I mean, the idea that you could separate out, like, if we don't mask and if we don't take the rules seriously, and if we simply, pretend that this will go away if we behave as we used to do, we'll get the economy back. It's like,
We
in
could
what
have actually,
in what
we could have
headspace do
saved
you
so
think it's
much.
going to work that way?
We could have saved so much if we'd have taken it all more seriously on the front end. We would be in a much better place, a much
Yeah.
different place. But we know the road ahead, and we can fight that too. We can do that.
Well,
So
I think theoretically we can, but that's my problem. Is I'm not entirely sure. I'm just afraid that our societal breakdown, our great mental breakdown as a country that preceded COVID, has made it difficult for us to save our own asses.
You're not entirely wrong, unfortunately, I think. And the reason I say that is I've watched a documentary called The Brainwashing of My Dad, or something to that effect. And it's about how, how insidious the right-wing media infected thinking, and how it all built up to where we got to. And it's frightening, because it is a matter of
Germany was considered to be one of the most intellectually sophisticated countries in the world,
right.
prior to the Second World War, and arguably prior to the First World War. I mean, people are extremely susceptible to.
It's a cult of
One of
personality.
my big bugaboos, my pet peeves, is that I've always objected to the concept that Americans sometimes have of themselves as somehow special.
No, we're not.
I mean, people are people. I don't think America is particularly worse than other countries. I mean, nativism, fascism, stupidity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They are rampant all over the world. Go to Turkey, it's a fucking mess. Poland is a mess. Hungary is a mess. India is a mess. China's a mess. Russia's a mess. Yada 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 yada. I just don't. I think if this has done anything, I hope it has taken our American kind of like, look at me, my shit don't stink, and knocked us off that fucking pedestal.
The smart ones of us, but we weren't thinking that anyway. I've long been disillusioned of American exceptionalism. We have exceptional people here that do exceptional things, but as a group, we've failed miserably of recent.
Yeah, and there are exceptional people everywhere. I mean,
Yep.
I think America was incredibly. I mean, what we had the luxury of getting to do because of the peculiarities of our geography. To me, we had certain freedoms to explore and experiment politically and geographically that gave us countries didn't get a chance to do. That didn't mean we were better people. It just meant that we had a different playing field.
Yeah, exactly.
That playing field ain't there anymore.
It's not at all. It's not at all. But John, tell me, where can the folks reach out and help the projects you're interested in or the projects you support?
Yes. You can follow me at jbillingsley60 on Twitter. And if you wanted to go check out Hollywood Food Coalition, the easiest way to do it would be to go to hofoco.org, hofoco.org.
Nice.
That's our website. If you happen to live in the Los Angeles area, the 60 of you who are listening, you're welcome to volunteer. We need people to come in and cook and serve and help us rescue and share food every day. And my other, and I'll close because I know you've probably got to go, and I got to go see if I can catch a little bit of the Chiefs.
A little bit of the game, yeah.
But the other thing that I close with is that, this is something I just always like to say to anybody who's listening, is that there's some place in your hometown, if you are still looking for your own volunteeristic bliss, a way to kind of like, up the ante a little bit in terms of what you might give back, that will serve a deep need in you. And I always really encourage people who are kind of thinking, gee, maybe I should do a little bit more, to kind of try and identify what it is that might kindle that passion in you. And it's very different for all of us. It could be the arts, it could be education, it could be teaching kids to read, it could be helping to work on ecological issues, it could be food, it could be any number of things. I always like to kind of make a little plug for the idea of brighten the corner where you are and find another group that's doing shit and join them. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to make it up yourself.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, no, it's good advice. And I can second that, having done those things here in my area at various times, starting nonprofits to help local makers and growers have a marketplace. And, just find there are groups of interest that you can participate in that are likely doing good in your community already. Like John said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and you'll make friends for life.
You absolutely will. Because obviously, if you get to those folks, they're obviously doing kind-hearted things, and kind-hearted people make really good friends.
They do. They make, and you know what? If you're really base about it, you might even get laid. Maybe
that's true. I mean, if the species must continue.
The species
in some
don't
regard.
go to an app. Go to a not-for-profit.
That's even better. That's right. That's volunteer time at your local not-for-profit to find your next date. John Billingsley.
Don't be too obvious about it. Don't right. Like,
yo, bros, I heard there would be some babes here.
That's right. Enough of this teaching children to read. When's
Exactly.
John Billingsley said that there'd be sex.
That ought to speak it right into existence for those of you who are struggling out there in that regard. Well, John, man, I absolutely appreciate your time and attention to be here, brother. It's It's been a joy for me. I know the listeners are going to get a big kick out of it.
We didn't talk about bourbon. We never talked about bourbon.
We didn't talk about bourbon. That's okay.
Next time.
You know,
Next time.
That's it. See, that's the point, is that there's always a next time. We bring the show to a close and not to an end. That way we get to come back to it and talk some more later on down the line. And with that, though, listeners, I appreciate your ears. Oh, it's the phone again. I appreciate your ears, and we will hope to earn them again for next week. If you would like to support the show, you can do so by sharing it with your friends. But if you'd like to support directly, you may do so by reaching out at patreon.com/DANTECKR and becoming a patron, where you can gain early access to these shows and much more. And with that, I'll say good night from the Toadsuck Studios here in beautiful Central Arkansas.
Ciao, Bella. That's my wife on the phone. I better go get that.
You better go get that. That is better than the bat phone.
All right.
All right, John. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.